This is Gemara Megillah Daf Chof Aleph. All learning for this month, the month of Teves, has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf. The Zecher Nishmas, his father, Rav Leib and Rav Yaakov Zatzal. They're learning the entire Chabura that Baruch Hashem keeps on growing. Should be a tremendous chosli neshama for Rav Leib and Rav Yaakov as he's oiled to a higher and higher place in Gan Eden Shel Meila. As well as all learning should be a choshidach v'zochaim the version Yemirim Bas Yitzchak Shalos v'Shanmakol Merchav Zavshin Asisk Vasavshin Shem and Chayish Shalom Bin Levi Zahava. As well, the learning should be a chos for Shem Shal Yos Ben Yevid Ben Vegachim Mesar Shalom Sin Ben Rizi Idol Zor Vas Kenad Tzvazim Vas Chayis Yosef Yoel ben Midel Yad their parents ben Shalei Shomas Nami Vashav Figure Shechan Shmo ben Tilat in Khan Rezim Chai Vasmina Dinena Vishidmen Sviva Figure Rivka was the Shavan of Talz Bim Khlas I remember by Yaakov Paul Avram ben Rachel Haidaya Shimshon ben Chaya Chana, Abigail Perel Bas Esther B'Seich Shar Chayli Yisrael. We pick it up on the very top of Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. Baruch Hashem, another exciting day in the Daf as we're going to conclude the second parak here of the Maseches Megillah. As we start a new week, and as Rosh Chodesh is on the horizon, if anyone would like, we're happy to share the schos of the learning. Please reach out regarding sponsorships. But most importantly, let's pick it up on the top of the Amud, as the Gemara says, Ularifas ha'egla. And this is continuing the list that we saw in the Mishnah of all the different things that have to be done by day. And says the Gemara, Amrit Vei Rav Yana in the second line of Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, Kapara Ksivba Kikachim. It says Kapara, and therefore it's the same status as Karbanais, which therefore, again, we're talking about the Egla Aruf of the decapitated calf, and therefore it has the same status as Karbanis. And we continue in the Gemara, L'Tahiris Mitzayra, and the Tahira of the Mitzayra has to be by day. It's on the day of the Tahira. And then the Mishnah said, Kol HaLayla. First half of the Mishnah was the entire day, was kosher for the Megillah, for Lulav, for Musaf, etc., for Tvila, etc. Mitzayra says that the Mishnah at the end, and Kol HaLayla kosher l'ksiras Aimer. The entire night is kosher for the next list in the Mishnah, which was ksiras Aimer, etc. So we begin with ksiras Aimer, cutting down of the Aimer. Says the Gemara, where we know this from, the Amar Mar ksira usfira balayla v'hava b'yoyim. Says Amar, says the Brisa, the ksira and the counting of the Omer, is done at night, and the bringing of the Omer is done by day. And then the Mishnah continued, the burning of the fats and the limbs, which of course was a full night procedure in the Beis HaMikdash, could be done the entire night. How do I know? The entire night until the morning. And then the Mishnah concluded with a general rule. Zeh klal davar shemitzvasa bayoyim kosher kol hayoyim, and then it said davar shemitzvasa kol halayla kosher kol halayla. And as we all know from all the gemaras that we've learned, that any time the Mishnah concludes with a zeh klal, this is the rule. Obviously, that line is coming to include something. The Mishnah had a whole list of things kosher by day, a whole list of things kosher by night, and then it concludes zeh klal. Obviously, the zeh klal is coming to include something. So, in classical fashion, says the Gemara, what is the general rule of everything done by day is coming to include the setting up and the removal of the bazichin. What were the bazichin? The bazichin were the spoons of the ketairis that was sitting on the shulchan. That the Mishnah is coming to include you have the entire day to set up and the removal of the spoons. And who does this go like? Says the Gemara, Uke Rav Yosi, Titania Rav Yosi Omer Silak es hayeshana shachris. You remove the old spoon in the morning, the Siddur es chadasha arvis, and you set up the new spoon in the evening. Ein if that's what you did, says Rav Yosi, there's nothing wrong with it. Meaning, listen what just happened. In the morning, you remove the old spoon. There could have been 8 hours, 10 hours until the night, and in the night, you put on the new spoons. Even though there's an entire day, almost, without the spoons on the shulchan, it's no problem. Because the entire day is kosher for this avodah. So when the Mishnah says, Zeh klal, this is the rule, it's coming to include this case, that the entire day let to remove and set up the spoons. Umani Makayim, and ask the Gemara, 1 second. What do we fulfill if Nei Hashem Tamid? It says with regard to the Shulchan that the entire day has to be constantly, and seemingly constantly would mean, which is the opinion that argues on Rav Yosi, that says the spoons have to be the moment you remove, you bring the new spoon. Just like this bread, the moment you take out the bread, you push them in with the new breads. Says the Gemara, it's exactly what it comes to include according to Rav Yosi. Shlei Shulchan, B'loi Lechem, there is not allowed to be one, well now the machlek is how to the gears of the Gemara here. Either the Gemara means shelo yolin v'lo lechem, that there should not be an entire night without bread, or that's the Pashut Pshat what it means, and we'll leave it at that. And let's just see the bottom Rashi, over the last Rashi in the parak. Let's see over here. The what's Rav Yosi Damar Meseches Menachos Afilu Silek Es Yishana Shachris. You see this Chadash Arvis Ein Zu Aisa Tamid Umahu Tamid. What does it mean Tamid? Shlo Yolin Shulchan B'lo Lechem, that the entire night can't be without bread. Meaning the daytime is not a problem. You have the whole day to do that avoid. You can remove the old in the morning, but the new in the night. But the entire night can't be without bread. Aval Rabbanan. That's why we're seeing this Rashi. Rashi speaks out who argues on Rav Yosi, like we spoke out, the sheet of the Rabbanan. Tifcha ishal zeh misader b'sal tifcha ishal zeh. The tefach, this edge pushes this edge, and it was simultaneous. There was never a 1 split second without the breads and without the bezich, without the spoons. And then the Mishnah concluded b'layla kasha kol halayla, that any avodah which is done at night, you have the entire night. Says the Gemara, the same kasha lasuye mai, what's this coming to include? Lasuye achilas psachim, something we dealt with extensively in Gemara Psachim, that you have the entire night to eat the Karban Pesach. And the Gemara explains, Udeloi Kravlaz ben Azariah. It's not like Kravlaz ben Azariah. Who's Kravlaz ben Azariah? The Tanya of Achlu es Abasar b'Leila Azeh. You eat the flesh in this night. Amar Kravlaz ben Azariah. Nemar Kan b'Leila Azeh. Nemar L'Halon. And it says elsewhere, Vavarti Beretz Mitzrayim. Excuse me. I passed through the land of Mitzrayim on that night, which is by Makas B'Chayros. Malahalon, this past week's parsha, Ad Chatzois, Avkan Ad Chatzois. So Rav Elazar ben Azariah says, how long can we eat the Karban Pesach? Only until Chatzois. Our Mishnah is not like that. Our Mishnah is arguing, and the Mishnah is going with the other man, the Amr, that says, you have the entire night to eat the Karban Pesach. So the Zah, Klal, the general rule in the Mishnah, is coming to include two cases. By day, it's coming to teach us, like Rav Yosi, that the removal of the spoons of the Ketayres on the Shulchan, the Bazichin, could be done in the morning, and then at night, even as many hours without it, because the entire day is one entity. And similarly, at night, the entire night is one entity, that you could eat the Karban Pesach the entire night. We should return. We should do a chazara. We should do an incredible review of this fascinating second parak, the parak that dealt with the Megillah itself. They're not the ultimate Megillah itself. The parak that dealt with many of the Medinim of the Megillah. We should do an incredible chazara in Mirza Hashem. And now, what do? Of course, as always, we go headstrong into the new parak. Says the Mishnah, HaKoyri es HaMegillah oimed v'yoshif. You're allowed to read the Megillah standing or sitting. Karoi echad, one person can read the Megillah. Karoi shnayim, two people can read the Megillah simultaneously. Yatsu, you are Yaitse. Makim shenagu lavarich, yavarich. In a minhag that you make the bracha on the Megillah, you make the bracha. Shaloi lavarich, loy lavarich. B'sheni ubecham. Now that's the end of the dinim of the Megillah in the Mishnah. Now says the Mishnah going into dinim of Kriyas HaTorah. B'sheni ubechamishi b'Shabbos. B'sheni v'chamishi b'Shabbos b'mincha. Either on Monday or Thursday and Shabbos and Mincha, how many aliyos are there? Karin Shleisha, 3 aliyos. Ein Paychas and Mamei Maisifan Alem. There's no Isafas during the week. Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, Mincha, 3 aliyos, no more, no less. Ve'ein Maftir Benavi, and there's no Haftarah. Ha'Paiseach va'Achaisim ba'Torah. The one that opens and the one that concludes in the Torah. Not each and every aliyah. The first and the last. The first one does the bracha before, and the last does the bracha after. Mavarich Lafanel Ulachra. Bereish Chadash on Rosh Chodesh u'b'Chol Shalmayid and a Chol Hamayid Karin Arba. In Barichs and Man Vein Maisif and 4 aliyos, no more, no less. Vein Maftir Menavi no Haftarah. And again, Hapaseva Chayzim HaTorah Mavarich Lafaneha Ulachra, the one that starts and the one that ends, makes the bracha before and after respectively. Zaklal. Now the Mishnah gives a rule how to always remember the aliyos. Kol Sheish by Musaf Ve'ina Yantiv, which of course like Rosh Chodesh that we have coming up. Karin Arba 4 aliyos. Ve'Yantiv Chamisha 5 aliyos. B'Yom Kippurim Shisha and B'Shabbos Shiva. Ein Barichas and Mehem. You cannot do less, but Avol Maisif and Aleim, you're allowed to add on. Umaftirim benavi, you have Haftarah, Posev Achayzim HaTorah, Mevarich Lafanel Achra. So we have 2 parts in the Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah dealt with the Megillah itself. You're allowed to read standing and sitting, and you're allowed to read it with multiple people. And the second half of the Mishnah dealt with the aliyos during the week. 3 The Rosh Chodesh 4, Cholamayid 4, and then it went and continued Yom Tov 5, Yom Kippur 6, and Shabbos 7. Just one detail that we have to focus in on. The Mishnah 3 times said, 3 different times as you see highlighting in front of you. So the obvious question is, why did the Mishnah repeat itself 3 times? And indeed, Taisus over here asks that Kasha, what's the reason the Mishnah said it 3 times? And Taisus responds that, you know what the reason is? Because you would think, whichever one is greater than its friend, that has more aliyahs, now maybe each and every one has to make an aliyah. So the Mishnah hones in and says, no, still only the first and last has to make a bracha, which of course we know is not what we do, but we will get there. Says the Gemara Tana, we learned in the Mishnah, Mash Inkin Bat Taira. The Mishnah said Megillah you're allowed to lay standing or sitting. Says the Gemara, but it comes to the Taira, no. When it comes to the Taira, you have to stand. And Rashi points out, we're talking about B'tzibur, you're not allowed to sit down because of cover that tzibur. Says the Gemara, immediately, where do we know this din? That you're not allowed to sit down when you're reading the Torah in public. Says Hashem to Moshe, you stand here with me. So just like I, Kaviyach, whatever that means, as if to say, Hashem is standing, Moshe has to stand with them. And similarly, when we're learning the Torah, we have to do the same. If not for the pasuk, that made it sound like as if Hashem is standing. No one would, God forbid, able to portray Hashem in a human form. And similarly, how do you know that the Rebbe can be on the mita on the bed and the Talmidim on the ground? You would think maybe the Rebbe is allowed to be higher. Says the Gemara, no. Hashem said to Moshe, we're equal, whatever that means. So too the Rebbe and the Talmud have to be on the same level. Tana Rabbanan, says the Gemara, a bit of history. One time that Moshe Rabbeinu, until Rav Gamliel was nifter, whoever learned Torah, they never sat, covered at Torah. They stood when they learned. But then, Misha Meis Rav Gamliel, what happened? We got weaker. Vayalamedim Torah miyushav sitting. V'hainu ditznan, that is the meaning of the Mishnah, 5 lines to the bottom that says, Misha Meis Rav Gamliel, and Gamliel is nifter, batal, covered at Torah. Ksav echad oimer, one pasuk says, Visha bahar, and I'll sit in the mountain. Ksav echad oimer, v'nochi amarati bahar. I'll stand in the mountain. Amarav, oimed, v'loy made, Ramosha would stand and learn Yeshiv V'Shaina. He would sit down when he heard his review. Rav Chanina Amar, no, lo oimed v'lo Yeshiv el Sheikha, he was leaning. Rav Yochanan Amar in Yeshiva Loshen Akava. What does the word Ashiva mean? It doesn't mean sitting, it means holding back. Shnamar Vateshu B'Kadesh Yamim Rabin doesn't mean they sat in the place called Kadesh. It means they stayed there for many days. And Rava Amar Akka is Me'umaid, V'Kasha is Me'umaid. And Rava says the difficult sugyas they will learn sitting down, they need more strength. And the easier sugyas they will learn standing. So of course, even though we're seeing that after Rav Gamliel is nifter, Batal covered at Torah to some extent, and we're allowed to sit when we learn. But of course, we can take a bit of a chizuk, a bit of inspiration, what it means to learn Torah. That it used to be, you wouldn't sit down when you're learning Hashem's spoken word. How could that be? Incredible. Says the Gemara on the last line, Kar echad kar shnayim yaitza. Excuse me. It said in the Mishnah, if one person reads the Megillah, if 2 people read the Megillah, you are Yaitse. As we turn over to Amid Beis, Chaval from the Beis, says the Gemara Tana, we learned in a Raisa, Masha Inkin Ba Taira. Taira is not that way. When it comes to Taira, 2 people are not allowed to read. By Megillah, we just said 2 people can read. But Taira, no, it has to be 1 person. Tana Rabbanan says the Gemara, Ba Taira, Echad Kaira, Vecha Metargim. By Taira, 1 person reads and 1 person translates. Ubelvachli, Echad Kaira Shnayim Metargim. You cannot have 2 people translating. And Rashi speaks out, the reason is because the reason they translated the Torah so people understood and people heard, and the reason you have to understand the Torah is to know what the mitzvahs are, and that's the reason why if you were to have 2 people translating simultaneously, you can have 2 people translating because you're not going to hear properly. By Navi, you're allowed to have 2 people translating. What's the reason? Because there's no mitzvahs to learning by Navi. And by Navi, why are we translating? We're just translating so everyone can hear, to do it loudly. And therefore, Navi is not, I don't want to say as important, but therefore 2 people can translate. But even Navi, you can't have 2 people reading. Ube Megillah, afilu asara kairin v'asara metargmin. Hallel and Megillah is incredible. Even 10 could read simultaneously, 10 could translate. Why? My taima says the Gemara, Since it's Chav and it's beloved to us, hallelujah, we're praising Hashem. The Megillah, the incredible story, which we've learned already, is also a canon on the same level as a Hallel. Therefore, you put your mind on it and you'll be able to hear it. So even if 2, 10, 3 are reading simultaneously, it's not a problem. Says the Gemara about 8 lines to the bottom, wherever you have to make a bracha on the Megillah, the minhag you make the bracha. This is only the bracha afterwards, which the statement of Abaye teaches us an incredible halacha. We're seeing is that the level of of obligation of the bracha on Megillah is less the bracha after the Megillah. That's a minhag to say it. But the bracha before the Megillah is a mitzvah. How do we know that? Of course, we make a bracha on all mitzvahs before you do it. My mashma asked the Gemara, a Gemara that we've seen many, many times. Gemara in Pesachim we saw it in Sukkah. How do we know that the word Oiver means before? Says the Gemara, who Amar Amnachmar Yitzchak Amar Krav Yoretz Achimat Derech Hakikar. Achimat ran the way of the vineyard. Vayavar Esakushi, and he was Oiver the Kushi. And what does Oiver mean? Oiver means he passed by. So we see it means that beforehand you have to say the bracha. Abai Amar Me'achav who Avar Lefneim, and he went in front of them. Again, another source it means in front of them. V'Bayzim Me'achav Yavram Malachim Lefneim Hashem B'Reisham. So we see we have to make brachas beforehand. So the bracha before the Megillah is on a higher level, it's a mitzvah. The bracha after the Megillah is only a minhag, and that's the reason why, very important, that the bracha after the Megillah we only say, for example, Berabim, we only say with a minyan, and we wouldn't say it b'yachin, and that's one of the reasons we're saying over here it's only a minhag to say the bracha afterwards. Says the Gemara, what is the text of the bracha? Rav Sheshes Mikatarzia Ikla L'Kamei Rav Ashi Ubarich Manach. What is manach? Says Rashi. Rashi's 6 lines into the narrow lines. Al Mikra Megillah is the mem, the nun is shasanisim v'shechianu. The 3 incredible brachas when we read the Megillah, Mikra Megillah, shasanisim, shechianu, and of course the shechianu. We remind everyone they're being yaitzi the rest of the mitzvahs of Purim. Lachareha may mevarich. What is the bracha after the Megillah? A bit of a lengthier bracha. Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Harav es rivenu. We say blessing to Hashem who takes up our grievances. V'adanas dinenu. He judges our cases. V'anoikim es nikmaseinu. And he takes revenge, and he pays back those that deserve him, and he destroys all our enemies. Who pays back the Klal Yisrael from all their enemies. And Rava Amar, no. We conclude a slightly different, says Rava, the God who brings salvation. Amar Rababa, says Rababa, we have a machlekes, 2 opinions. How do you conclude the bracha? So says Rababa, Hilkach, Namrinu l'Tarvei, we say both of them, Baruch Ata Hashem, Hanifra li Yisrael, Mikol Tzarem, Hakel Mashiach. That's of course what we do. We conclude the bracha with both of them. And now we go into the halachas of Kriyas HaTorah, of Aliyahs, how many Aliyahs during the week, and Mincha by Shabbos. We start off with 3. B'Sheni b'Chamishi, b'Shabbos, and Mincha, Karin Shleisha. Says the Gemara, Hani Shleisha Keneged me, a fundamental question we should ask yourself. We are Kriyas HaTorah every Monday, every Thursday, Shabbos and Mincha. Why 3? Where does 3 come from? Amar Ravasi, Keneged, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim. 2 lines from the wide lines. Rav Amar, Keneged, Nevi'im, Yisraelim. Ask the Gemara, Rav Simi, that which Rav Simi said, Ein Poichasin Meyod Psukim. Excuse me, whoa, we just lost the daf. Says Rav Simi, here it is, one more time, in the first medium-sized line. Ein Poichasin Meyod Psukim Abisek Says Rav Simi taught us, you can never say less than 10 Psukim. Vayedaber Oila Min Aminyin, and Vayedaber count. Asara Keneged me. Where does 10 Psukim come from? So we know we have 3 Aliyah, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, Kehanim, Levi'im, Yisraelim. But now it says, okay, now that you're explaining, where do the 10 psukim, the minimum amount for Kriyas HaTorah is 10 psukim, where does that come from? Rishu ben Levi, Keneged, Asara, Batlanim, Shavesa Knesses. As we saw very recently, towns should always have 10 people devoted full time to learning and nothing else. They're Batlanim, not Batlanim as the term means, that they're doing nothing and sitting idle. The exact opposite, they're Batal from Malacha, and they sit and learn Torah each and every day. Rav Yosef Amar, Keneged Esara, Adibur, Shem Moshe Lesinai, the Asara is Adibur. So Rav Yochanan Amar, Keneged Asara Maimaros, the 10 Maimaros, Shabam Nivra Eilam, that the world was created. It says the Gemara, hey you. Where? How do you count the 10 mamarais? Vayomer Debereshis, Hani Tishavai. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If you start counting and you go from the Bereshis, what do we have? We only have 9. Hey Ninu, what are the 10 utterances? Vayomer de Bereshis is only 9. Answers the Gemara, Bereshis Nami Maimru. Bereshis itself is considered a Maimar, a statement of Hashem to create the world. Chsev, B'dvar Hashem Shamayim Nasu Baruch Piv called Tzvam. So we see the word, if that was the creation, that was a statement and an utterance of Hashem in the creation of the world. And now we go, okay, so we learned this 3 aliyahs, Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, Mincha. Why? Kohen Levi Yisrael, Tanakh. We have 10 psukim minimum each time. Why? A plethora of reasons the Gemara just taught us, the 10 Batlanim, the 10 Mamaris of Hashem, etc. The 10, there was a Gerus over here that they took out, the 10 Hilulim that David said in Sefer Tehillim. But now says the Gemara, Amar Rava, Rishain Shekara Dalin Meshabach, Sheni Shekara Dalin Meshabach, Shlishi Shekara Dalin Meshabach. Says Rava, any of the 3 aliyahs, if you chap the extra pasuk, because there's 3 aliyahs, 369, 3 minimum, 369. Wait, so where's the 10th pasuk? So says Rava, whichever one, if the first one does 4, he's the best. If the second does 4, he's praiseworthy. If the third does 4, he's praiseworthy. And now let's look at Rashi for a moment before we see the Gemara. The source today says Rashi about 15 lines at the bottom. Rishain, Minat Shleisha Shekara Arba Psukim. The first of the 3 that reads 4 Psukim, Meshabach. V'chein Sheni V'chein Shlishi. Im Lo Yasa Rishain V'asa Sheni. If the first doesn't do, in the second does, Im Lo Kara Lo Rishon Lo Sheni, Arba Psukim V'karas, and V'shlishi, and the third does, Meshabach. Now Rashi points out, and this is what we wanted to point out. V'im Yesh Lem Revach Be'Parsha. Let's say it's a longer parsha. So each person could read 4 Bakar Kol Echad Arba Psukim, Kulan Meshubachim, they're all praiseworthy. So it's something to remember. A longer aliyah is more praiseworthy. And now the Gemara speaks out. Where do we know this source from? 3 lines from the white lines. How do we know that the Tanam Shal reminiscent of the Gemara in Shkalim? There were 3 kupais that were 3 saw large. And they would give the chuma, they would give the machzah shekel. They would put in these 3 boxes. And it was written on them, Aleph Beis Gimel. Why? Leida Izmem Nitzra Risha, to know which one came first. Why do we care which one came first? Lehakir Mimenu Rishain. This is a source. First is the best. This is a source that is a mitzvah for the first one. Similarly, if the first person does 4 psukim, he is praiseworthy. And now the Gemara continues in the first white line. If the middle guy reads 4 is praiseworthy, how do I know that? The Tanya, we see this from the Menaira in the Beis Hamikdash, that all the candles face towards the center one. The 3, there were 7 candles, so the 3 in each side would face towards the Ner Maravi, the middle candle. The Ner Maravi would face Klabi Shechina. And on this, Amar Rav Yochanan, the second white line, we can't Shem Sai Meshubach. From here we see that the middle one is praiseworthy. How do we know the last one that reads 4 is praiseworthy? You go up and you don't go down. So if the first is good and the second is good, certainly the third is good. Rapapa went to shul. And Rapapa praised him. Beautiful. Says the Gemara in Payachzam and Sifin. So these 3 aliyahs, you can't do more, you cannot do less. Says the Gemara 6 lines to the bottom. Tana. The first makes the first bracha, the last makes the last bracha. This is the line that we have to realize, like we pointed out. What do? We each make the bracha before and after every aliyah. Why? They made it sakana. Why? Someone might leave early and someone might come late. So if the first person makes only the bracha beforehand, what happens if you leave early? You'll think there was no bracha after the laning. And if someone came late and he missed the first bracha, then he thinks there's only bracha after the laning. So because of that, people coming early and late, people coming late and leaving early, they made a gezerah that each and every person should make the bracha. Says the Gemara, B'Rosh Chadashim B'Chol Shamai Karnabra. On Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, Rosh Chodesh coming up in 2 days, we read 4 aliyos. Poi minei ula bar Rav Meirav. Parshas Rosh Chodesh Kitzad Kairin. I saw a very, very perhaps famous Gemara in concept, but we'll be able to see it together and hopefully we'll appreciate the lane in this Rosh Chodesh that much more. The Parsha of Rosh Chodesh, how do you lane it? Why? Says the Gemara, we have a problem. The Parsha is only 8 psukim. So how do you divide up 8 psukim? Nikri Trey Tlasa, let 2 people read 3, which is 6 psukim. Tlasa psuki, Pashlu There's only 2 left, and you're not allowed to do that. You never allowed to leave it less than 3. And when we say parsha, parshas have you pay or samach in the Torah, so you can't leave less than 3 psukim to the next parsha. Psukim. Nikri arba. Let each one read 4. So now we finished the first parsha. Okay, so those 8 psukim are taken care of. So what's the next parsha? Pashalu shiva. There's 7 psukim now left. So now we also have an issue because we have 2 aliyahs left, and we have 2 psukim followed by 5 psukim. What should you do? Nikri trey meha v'chan mehanich. Let aliyah number 3 read 2 from the first parsha and 1 from the next parsha. What happens as we turn over to tomorrow's Daf Chabeis? The real problem is in maschlim parsha b'chas mishlash psukim. You never allowed to begin a parsha less than 3. So if I'm leaning 2 from Yom HaShabbos, I can't just lean 1 for the next parsha. So what do? Likri trey meha utlasa mehach. So okay, so lean 2 from Yom HaShabbos, and then leave 3, because you have to always start with 3. 3 for the next parsha. What's the problem? Pashalu trey. It's only a 5 pasuk parsha. She left over with 2 psukim, and therefore, what are we supposed to do? We're stuck between the rock and the hard place. How do we do a leaning by Kriyas HaTorah verse Chodesh? And he responds, Amar loy zu loy shamati. I didn't hear this. But Kiyotze by shamati, or similarly, the Tanan be a Marishan, Bereshis v'Yerakiah, v'Tanei Allah, and this is the Gemara in Tainis that we saw very recently, Bereshis b'Shnayim, Yerakiah be'Echad. And we have the same problem, Va'avina ba, and we're actually going to stop over here, but we all know what the same problem is going to be, and tomorrow we're going to get into the fasting machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, whether you're a doilig, you skip, whether you double, or whether paisik, you split it the pasuk in half. We'll pick up from the parsha by Bereshis tomorrow. Shir b'siyata dishmaya.